Because if you look at the history of Western acting, it's about 2,500 years going back to the ancient Greeks. The first 2,100 years is what people think acting is: fake, pretend, representation. No, we've evolved past that. That's passe. About the 300 years that followed from there, like Victorian era, Shakespeare, we evolved towards realism. But it's in the last 100 years or so with this gentleman named Konstantin Stanislavski where he turned it philosophical. It's not about acting anymore. It's about becoming someone else. You know, ultimate empathy in a sense, spiritual shapeshifting. So we've gone so much deeper. So now that we have all this stuff written out, we can allow essentially anyone to change who they are fundamentally, mentally, and emotionally. And the applications are just boundless.
Hello, I am John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, okay, we know where Canada is. British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then they have that big city in British Columbia called Vancouver. Well, yes, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver. And for our friends in Europe watching us, that's 800 kilometers. And that puts us in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west, big province. And so Prince George, smaller community, about 85,000 people. It is the center of nature here in central British Columbia. Lots of forest, lots of lakes around it, probably 100 lakes within 50 miles or 50 kilometers. And our friends in nature are black bears, grizzly bears, deer, mooses, caribou, you name it, we have them all here. And today, obviously, James Rojas is our guest. And James, very interesting person. He has a background in a number of things, has been in the military. He was a U.S. Marine, in fact, and we'll talk about that a bit. And he is also involved in entrepreneurship. He has been involved in the movie industry. He's an author and many, many other things. James, welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite. I'm excited to be here and get this word out to you and your audience.
So, James, interesting background you have. Tell us about where are you from, where were you born, in which area, and where do you live now, in which state or which city, and then do you take us to your military career, obviously your education, your military, and then from there on in, and to all the things that followed?
Sure. I guess, like, to me, I have a real rock solid memory going back. I spent time communing with my whole life. And I traced this idea and everything is happening to me back to when I was age 4. When I was age 4, I was taking the midnight mass, and the concept of eternity, for whatever reason, freaked me out. You know, the thought that there's no end, there could be no middle. If there's no middle, I'm in the perpetual beginning. So 10,000 eons from now is still the beginning of my journey.
Right.
And what freaked me out was the idea of, like, if I do everything many times over, what am I going to do with the rest of eternity? So boredom freaked me out. So I regressed in my mind and started instinctually treating it like a computer. I started creating programs for myself, and two of my oldest and most predominant ones are my suits and bubbles. My suits are like different versions of myself. Whenever I met someone, I would actively listen to them and make a copy of them as myself so I could see the world through their eyes as me. And my bubbles are essentially like the holodeck in the Star Trek universe. I would create little worlds in my mind where I could put these suits and act out scenarios or situations so I can make the best choices for myself. It allows me to see the choices. And as I progress through my life, I see how it helped me. People would recognize that if they had a problem, just stick me in front of the problem and I can shoot out answers. Getting into the military, it's something that kind of felt like there's a lot of little points going to it that pushed me into the military. The only problem was I didn't get where I should have been. I was drawn into the Marine Corps because of films like Heartbreak Ridge and Full Metal Jacket, but I scored too high in the ASVAB and got stuck behind a computer. So I was in the air wing. So I got in a lot of trouble. I got like 30 page 11s. Page 11s are administrative marks. My first one was verbatim, too much Rambo motivation. My second one was likes to play soldier. And I was like, thought I'd join the Marine Corps. I only served 5 years active, one reserve. I got out after my first tour. But after that, my luck took a turn because I tripped into acting. I didn't mean to. It was never something I really kind of pushed towards. But I was working at a restaurant in. I'm sorry. I was born in Jersey. That's where I began at. I'm first generation American. My parents are Peruvian immigrants. They both immigrated from Peru. Back in the '70s. I'm a Gen Xer. Uh, Flash forward, I was 10 years old. They moved us to Alabama, and that's where I was when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and where I returned to when I got out. So when I was in Alabama, in a town called Huntsville, where I was working, we were in this restaurant and we were rolling silverware. And I just remember one of the girls, she was talking about her voice lessons, how complicated they were. And I just kind of giggled and I'm like, really? I was in the Marines. That's nothing. And then she just bolted up. She said, I bet you couldn't do it, soldier boy. I'm like, I bet I could. So she challenged me to like 3 weeks. I'm like, I'll take 6 weeks of voice lessons. So I went, found a voice coach, and I committed to taking 6 weeks. But after the first lessons, I kind of forgot about it because it was just the voice coach was so good. He handled me so well. He kind of captivated me into it. And he was like, you ever heard of Jesus Christ Superstar? And I was like, yeah, but I've never heard it called Superstar before. And then he kind of giggled at me and he was like, we're going to work towards that. And then I just started acting in that point, little roles here and there. And I started booking things. And the reason I was doing so good at acting, I didn't know this at the time, was because I had been using the tools and techniques most of my life with the suits and bubbles. So I was booking like 80 and 90% of my gigs. Um, then flash forward to 2008 is when this idea hit me. I was doing a film called Hunger, opposite an actor called Lyndon Ashby, predominant actor. And when we were doing this scene, the camera was on him. I wasn't even on camera. But when they yelled cut, Lyndon reached over and shook my hand like I pulled his kid out of a fire. And I didn't understand it at first. And the reason was, when I came to understand it, was normally in that situation, the actor off camera is just kind of saying their lines. They're not really giving much to the other actor. So the actor can't do their best work. Even though I wasn't in character, I was still present in the moment because I've been practicing this lifestyle. So when I was even saying my lines as myself, I was still giving to him, and I was giving him what he needed to make his best performance. And it was that understanding that I refer to as my quickening moment, my Highlander moment, where I realized that all these tools and techniques that allowed me to live a richer and fuller life, a life where I'm essentially self-actualizing, are all teachable. They're fundamentally teachable by masters who put this together. It's just, and these tools and techniques came about 100 years ago. Because if you look at the history of Western acting, it's about 2,500 years going back to the ancient Greeks. The first 2,100 years is what people think acting is: fake, pretend, representation. No, we've evolved past that. That's passe. About the 300 years that followed from there, like Victorian era, Shakespeare, we evolved towards realism. But it's in the last 100 years or so with this gentleman named Constantine Stanislavski where he turned it philosophical. It's not about acting anymore. It's about becoming someone else. You know, ultimate empathy in a sense, spiritual shape shifting. So we've gone so much deeper. So now that we have all this stuff written out, we can allow essentially anyone to change who they are fundamentally, mentally, and emotionally. And the applications are just boundless. Like, think about adolescence. How many generations of civilization have we gone through with children going through adolescence with no way to deal with their emotions, when we have these tools and techniques that will literally, like going to the gym and exercising, rinse, wash, and repeat. The more you exercise, the stronger you get. Emotions are the same way. You exercise, you feel them, you grow them, you get an aptitude to how they work. If we give this to little ones from childhood, they grow up to be more emotionally capable people. And I'm essentially saying that this is a new form of literacy. When we gave humanity the written word, language changed the world. When we gave them mathematics, the ability to quantify numbers, changed the world. If we give them mental and emotional literacy, why wouldn't it change the world? And that's kind of
So,
where I'm at now.
yeah, so the interesting, James, so that in order to do that, to be in the today, to give them emotional attitude today, then you have to be, I would think, I don't know, I have not gone through this in a formal way, maybe in other ways I have, is that you have to know Who am I? First and
Absolutely.
foremost, in order to, on that basis, to become somebody else that you then can, but you can't unless you're still struggling with who are you?
I'm glad you brought that up because that leads right into the Stanislavski system. His system is 7 base questions. The purpose of these questions is to break down a moment. And I essentially use them like sonar, like a submarine uses sonar. Submarine can't see anything around them. What it does is sends out pings. Pings tells it where the submarines are, where whales are, where the ground is, where ships dropping depth charges are. Excuse me. The Stanislavski takes a moment. So when I walk into the room, I fire off these and so many more questions instantaneously, and it brings back information. Here's the 7 questions. Number 1, who am I? The moment in relation to you. Number 2, where am I? The moment in relation to the environment. Number 3, when is it? The moment in relation to time. Number 4, what do I want? The moment in relation to purpose. Why do I want it? Number 5, the moment in relation to desire. Number 6, how do I get it? The moment in relation to action. And number 7, what's in my way? The moment in relation to obstacles. These 7 questions are not just acting questions. These are life questions. But as actors, we use these questions to allow us to build our character. Now, we tell us in life all the time, we hear the platitudes, like in sports, mainly build character. Hard work builds character, but it's a platitude. What does that mean? These are the actual wrenches and screws and screwdrivers and whatnot, and how to do it. Because these actors, Stanislavski, Meisner, Hagen, when they were working on this material, they were working on the human mind and emotions. It doesn't matter that it's imaginary to the mind. It's all real. We're building real working human mindsets. We're learning how to feel real emotions in imaginary circumstances through the use of these exercises and tools. And there's scientists that are using it now to help broken people. What I'm saying is push it one step further and we can help everyone else in the beginning. We can raise a whole new generation of mentally and emotionally capable people like we've never seen before. And like I said, the Stanislavski system, just one of many tools and techniques. Just one.
So, I like and I agree with the Stanislavski system, the 7 points, obviously, starting with who am I is very important. Now, just for the friends that are watching us from around the world, is saying that to become an actor is likely something different than what we are talking about. It's not saying that I know very well-known actors, movie actors in particular, that come to mind, does not necessarily mean that in the sense that you're explaining it, really are actors. They may have their own challenges and they may not yet or will not be like we understand it for our purposes.
I think the idea of acting and entertainment gets in the way. I'm
Right.
saying remove that altogether. Don't even worry about it. This is about the tools and techniques because, like I said, these tools and techniques, like if you think about what artists work with, a metal worker works with metal, glass worker works with glass, a painter with instruments, composition, a painter with canvas and brush. The marble that actors work with is the human mind and emotion. That's what we chisel to create our art. So in creating that, we needed to make instruments. Those instruments work on everyone because the mind doesn't care whether it's the imaginative or reality. It just knows this is what you need. So basically, we can take these tools, like I said, apply them to little ones. Women complain all the time in relationships about men. They don't communicate. They don't have empathy. These are the tools and techniques that teach empathy. They teach theory of mind. They teach emotional regulation. They teach all the things that we need. They teach how to listen in multiple different ways, not just to listen with your ears, but to listen through behavior, how to read behavior through the Meisner technique. So basically, you just repeat back and forth so you don't get the words in the way. So it's just about studying your opponent, your partner's behavior. And then there's Hagen, Strasberg, Adler. Like I said, over the last century, most of them, they're pretty much all dead now. But while they were alive, they created all these amazing works that raised the art of acting to a philosophical level, a level it's not seen before that the rest of the world doesn't understand. Because, I mean, who looks to actors to be to found something important that'll change the world, you know? And unfortunately, actors don't go into acting to be better people. They go in for fame and fortune. So I feel like it's just something that was completely overlooked because no one had the eyes to see it. And because of what I did with my suits and bubbles, it's really all it was. It's like, I'm not creating anything here. I just tripped over it. And when I picked it up, I realized what I was looking at. And now I'm just trying to get the word out because I feel like there is so much untapped potential in this that could change the world. I'm not the hero this idea needs. I'm the hobo it has, but I'm the hobo that recognizes this is gold.
So, suits and bubbles that you started means what and what does it do?
Essentially, my suits are just characters. It's what an actor does. You build different characters. I
Right.
built different versions of me, but I did it through the people I met. So what I essentially was also doing was creating empathy because I was understanding how another person lived through myself. I met them there, you know, at the threshold of their knowledge. My bubbles are essentially what Stanislavski referred to as a separate exercise called his magic if. And it's just a thought experiment. My bubbles are a thought experiment. It's a what if. Stanislavski's magic if is a what if. All right, let's say I walk into the room for an interview. Well, what if I walk in the door and I realize it's a kid I used to bully? You know, okay, well, what if I walk in and I fumble with the door and I walk in and they see me fumble and I look like an idiot? Or what if I walk in and I see, you know, this amazing woman and it distracts me? Or what if I walk in and I just start gelling with the person right away and we have a great time? You're asking all these questions beforehand. So when I walk into the situation for the first time, I've already walked into it 100 times before, just in the thought experiment. So that's what the bubbles are for. And that's what the magic gift is. They're thought experiments to allow you to walk through a place you haven't been yet many times beforehand. So you're not cold going into it. It's in acting, the rehearsal process. It's as simple as that.
So, then what do you do with that understanding and then for yourself in terms of so you came out of the Marines and then had to make a decision as to saying where does James go from here and what should it look like and what motivated you to go in which direction, and you must have gone through a lot or a number of ups and downs before you reached where you are today.
I'm probably still very much in the downs. Lots of downs, but I don't really look at the direction. I'm a child of chaos and I follow impulses. Like the acting thing wasn't planned. When I got into the acting, I just started going to it and it was working. So I did it for 2 years in Alabama. And then all of a sudden the opportunity to go to New York. So I went to Manhattan. I wrote, produced, and performed a play. I wrote the play. From the moment I wrote the first line of the play to when I produced it on a New York stage was 5 months. And that's what blew people away. It's like, how did you do it so fast without knowing it? I'm like, that's my golden gift. I'm not smart enough to know that I shouldn't be able to do a thing. So I just start asking all the questions I need to do to get to the next step. And in doing so, I complete things. You know, I'm a high school dropout. I'm not the guy who should be thinking things like I do, but I have tenacity and I have these advantages because, like, the human brain's a supercomputer, right? That's not me saying it, that's science. What I essentially did, in a sense, was take these tools and techniques of the actor's toolkit and use them as my Windows 11 or my Linux Red Hat. It's the operating system that I use to interface my mind and emotions. And it gives me a huge advantage over my counterparts because I can think faster than they can. I can understand feelings. I can read the room. I can read temperatures in the environment, like from a human standpoint. So it's like, if it can do this for me, what can it do for the rest of the world? Because there's nothing special about me. It's like with you and your bodybuilding. You're a bodybuilder because you do the work. You know, it's not just something that was born into you. You get in there every day and you blast, or however long it is. You have a regimen and you blast and you make it happen. I've been doing the same thing. It's just with this thing. It's kind of like there's a human phenomenon that where, and most anybody in your audience will understand this if they've done something in repetition. It's like if you have a task that you had to do, the first time you did it, it kind of sucked. You fumbled around. It didn't work. It was like Tommy Boy. But after 3 months of doing it solid, you can do it without thinking about it. You know, you just kind of piece it together. You do it a lot faster. That's how the brain works. It's kind of like chunking, where it'll chunk stuff together. That's essentially what I did. I just did it with these exercises through my mind, and that's what sped my mind up. So instead of being faster at a task, the task that I pointed myself to was my mind, the way I think. And like I said, if that can do that for me, imagine what we're going to do for everyone else.
Now, the other challenge, James, that you had, you alluded to that, is that high school was not a success story.
No.
For you. Why?
Well, I think it's the way we learn. Because if we look at the way our education, at least here in the States, United States of America, it's set on the factory system where we're all going to teach you all the same way. And it's that philosophy like, if you tell a fish to climb a tree, it's not going to work. If we really cared about educating our kids, when we separated kids into classrooms, it'd be like, okay, those 30 kids are audio learners, put them with an audio teacher. Those 30 kids are practical learners, put them with a practical teacher. You figure out how the kid learns and put him with that kind of teacher. I couldn't learn in high school because most teachers didn't teach the way I learned, but I didn't know that because I was too young and dumb. There were some teachers that I worked really well with who I guess they taught the way I knew or they understood the way I learned, but I aced their classes. Like I failed English every year except the ninth grade and I'll still tell you, Miss Howell, I got straight A's in that class and she didn't, take it easy on me. I learned because I don't still don't understand why, but it was just the way she connected to me. But again, not all my teachers were like that. They were nice people. They just didn't teach the way I learned. So I failed a lot. And in life too, I live in a unique place. And two, I'm another. Others generally don't fit well in the world because we're in a world of very much same people. So same gets, treated well. Others just kind of get overlooked. So even though I have all these ideas and resources, people use them and love them, I still can't find advocacy or agency, I guess you could say. But I don't know. It sucks, but I still have my idea and I still can push it forward. So as long as I got that, I guess I got something, right?
So we have things in common, so the biggest challenge in my mind has been for me to find confidence in who I am and then to find out who am I. And that took me a long time to find out. I'm older than you are. I turned 84 about a month ago. 84 years young.
Look great.
I believe. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Holland, northeastern Holland, in fact, in 1940. And it was a difficult time. It was at the beginning of the Second World War. My mom and dad, they were in love and they married in 1938. And my dad had a good job and they had rented this house. And fairly quickly they had two children, a boy and a girl. And then in early 1940, my mom was pregnant with me and I would be born November the 1st, 1940. That's the time that a fella in Germany gained control over Germany. His name was Adolf Hitler, and he thought that Poland should be part of Germany and invaded Germany. The next step that he wanted to do is potentially attack Western Europe. My dad, then still early in his marriage, their whole life changed in early 1940. He was drafted into the Dutch army in April of 1940, and the last time somebody saw him was just before the bombing of Rotterdam. And Rotterdam is a huge city, and the Germans didn't feel, or Hitler didn't feel, that they capitulated quick enough, so they bombed the center of Rotterdam, and thousands of people died. So the first thing that I remember about war was in 1943, when the Allied forces had united and started bombing Germany, in particular the infrastructure where they built equipment for the war. and again visualize northeastern Holland, 10, 15 minutes from the border. I remember my mom would take us outside on a flat roof behind our house, and hundreds of bombers were in the air, hundreds of them. I still now, even now, remember the sound. I will never hear it again like that. Hundreds of bombers. And in the distance, the reason that she took us outside, she felt safer outside than inside. And in the distance, we could see the sky being red, where the cities were burning, and the infrastructure that had been bombed. And so that's the first thing that I remember. The second thing I remember is 1944 was the Germans had decided to cut off all the food supply to Holland, and I remember that part. I still feel now, 80 years later, the feeling of hunger. And so every morning, my sister, my brother, and myself, we would go with gunny sacks into the railroad yard, pick up anything edible and burnable. The reason that we did is they wouldn't shoot us, they put us one, but we'd be back the following day. The next thing that I remember stood out in my mind and changed my world, actually, is we were liberated on April the 12th, 1945, by the Canadian Army as part of the Allied forces that landed in Normandy in the summer of 1944. The U.S. Army and as well as the Canadian and many others. And so I remember that part. We saw as they came from Normandy through France, through Belgium, pushed the Germans through Western Holland, through the top, pushed them back into Germany. And so the Germans didn't have much left there. They were under severe pressure, quick with the trigger, blew up all the bridges behind them to slow down the Allied forces, the Canadians in particular. We saw far too much that we should not have seen. And so the other part that I remember is the winter of 1944-45 was the hunger winter. It was the coldest on record in Holland, and we had a small stove in the house, and that kept us warm, but a lot of kids died, a lot of older people died, and then until the liberation by the Canadians, April the 12th, 1945. And as I already indicated, it made such an impression on me that I knew when I grew up I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I was going to go when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me. It's too young. Then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force, Special Forces actually, for 2 years and 2.5 years about that. And so it was mandatory then, not now. And so after I came out of that, I decided that I would go to Canada and when I was 23 years old. And academically, I was not a successful story either. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And so they said to my parents, they would say, what are we going to do with this guy? And they said, well, maybe send him to the mentally challenged school. They said, no, we're not going to do that. And so we'll find him a job at 12 and a half years old. And my dad had a friend that had a furniture factory. So I became a laborer at 12 and a half years old in a furniture factory. And at nights, I would become a furniture maker, go to the college and learn about furniture making. And I did that. But kids can be hard on each other, as you know, is that all the friends that I had in grade 7 that went on to the college and university, I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then that was kind of looked down on. So I felt good about who I was, but more inside of me. In Holland, it is always a question then as to that if you want to go forward, you want to buy a house, or you want to get married, or you want to get in business, then the question is always, where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have any diplomas. So I had to, but I knew I was just as smart as the others. Not better than, but at least as smart. And so I wanted to go to Canada. I started with nothing. So I started with a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, very little money, and I was going to go to British Columbia, the west coast of Canada, because I wanted to. My grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad worked in lumber. I wanted to build a lumber mill. And so I landed in Montreal, took the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. Can you believe that's a long, long way to go? Anyway, so by the time I got to Vancouver, couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job. And I went to the immigration department. Fortunately, there was a fellow that was German background. I could speak a little bit of German, so I told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George, 500 miles north, or 800 kilometers. And so I took the Greyhound bus, 12, 13, 14 hours. I can still see 60 years later where the Greyhound station used to be. And I came off the bus with my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then I had on me, I counted my money at least 3 times. Couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job. I had $25.47. But what I had lots of attitude in terms of I always believe in the positive side. No matter how tough today is, I believe it will be a better day tomorrow, and I still do that today. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. All the things that I do. Work ethic, I work harder, even now at 84, than anybody else does. And I always get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And that's kind of how I started, right from cleanup man to all the other things. Yes, I do have my sawmills, and I do have a lot of other companies, and all of that kind of stuff. But the topic that I believe is an important one is that I still did not have the confidence or the ability to communicate effectively. And so, and it was not until I was already here for 32 years, already had numerous companies, but was not able to communicate outside of my circle with 2 or 3 different people. Outside of that didn't work until I went into a store here. I picked up a book. This is the book right here. The actual book I picked up. And when did I pick it up? I picked it up in January 1997. So, any particular reason? No reason. I still don't know even today why I picked it up, but it changed my life. The title is Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Edward Hollowell, medical doctor, professor. The book is about ADHD. Dr. Halliwell, ADHD, written 18 books, is recognized globally as an expert on that particular topic. Also dyslexia. So that's me. I know now, and when I read the book, I said to myself, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote, this is what I wrote in it. Now I finally know who I am. January 1997. And then the more I read out about it, the more I understood ADHD. So that is who I am. So then from that point forward, checking on Google, and the more I checked on it, the more I believe it's a superpower. And so, but even then, it took me 5 years after 1997 until, and by then I was 62 years old, that I went to my doctor, delivered our 2 daughters, was a personal friend, and he said to me, hey John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we checked it out, and I do. That part changed my life. The other part changed my life is the self-confidence that is critical, is that in 1990, before I even read this book and found that I was ADHD, somebody didn't drag me, but talked me into saying, I want you to come with me to an organization called Toastmasters. And I said, what's that all about? And they said, it's communication skills. And I said, okay, are they going to ask me any questions? They said, no, you just sit there and watch it. I said, oh, okay. And so I did. And halfway through the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us all about you. I said, oh, I'll never go back here. But I did. I stayed there for 10 years and became a distinguished Toastmaster, the highest level in Toastmasters. And I'm saying that so a lot of people say, okay, what is Toastmasters all about? As we speak, probably more than 500,000 people today are part of Toastmastering in your community, my community, and throughout North America, but other places. And probably 10, 20 million people in the last 20, 30 years have benefited to go through that process, not necessarily as far as I did, but at least for as much as it needed them. That part changed my life in combination with, in 1997, finding out about ADHD and Dr. Halliwell. And then from that point forward, my companies became more successful, although I was already successful in a lot. I started to become an author. I'm working on my 6th and 7th book as we speak. And then obviously I'm a successful podcaster. I do presentations in a number of areas, but coming back to the initial point that I was making is, who am I? And then build the confidence below it that I'm okay, just as good as anybody else in some areas, probably because of ADHD and other things. I've had more experience. The foundation for me has always been attitude, passion, work ethic, what will follow is success. And go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say that's a great story, and I really love where you're going with it because I can connect to it in a lot of different ways. The passion, work ethic, attitude, I love all that because I'm the same way, because those are tools that help you move forward. And I love the fact that you know who you are. But I'd like to add this is it's great that we know who we are, but I don't want us to limit ourselves thinking that's all that we are. We can grow into more than that, because people ask me all the time. It's like, yeah, you have all these different versions of you, but which one is you? Who's the real, authentic you? And I'm like, no, they're all me. They're
Yeah.
all me because they're not fronts. These are versions of myself that I exist in, that I lived through, that I fleshed out. That's why they're a part of me. And each one grows me more than I was before. So that's all I'm doing. I'm growing myself. So I'm not just one thing. I'm many things. I'm many different people all wrapped up into one. It's kind of like that idea of multiple personalities or multiple universes. There's different versions of me in all these different universes that took different paths, became different people. Yeah, I just essentially took all of those different people and brought them into my head. So I pulled them out of those different universes, stuck them in here, and now I've become more because of it. So that's what I'm on, because to me, everything in life is a learned skill. So passion, that's a learned skill. I can talk to people about paint drying with passion, because to me, passion is just me invoking my emotions. I'm taking the emotions that I've developed and exercised, and I'm pouring them out into something as I explain it. And that's where my intensity and passion come from. And attitude, that's because I have so many different attitudes, I can change in and out of them. I kind of say it's like Predator vision, that the old 80s film Predator, where they had the Predator and he had different vision he can swap through. It's the same way. As I change myself mentally and emotionally, alchemically in that way, whatever I'm looking at changes. The world around me changes. So I get different perspectives and I just flip through it over and over again until I find the right one for the situation I'm in. So I'm constantly growing myself in that retrospect. So now I'm just trying to say is I'm trying to figure out how to get this out, because I guess my problem is I am trying to create an industry that's never existed before. So I don't have anything to build on. I'm building it all up as I go, because this is an acting thing, but I'm not taking that direction. I don't want it to be an acting. I want to take this into education, to put it next to math and reading, because that's where it really belongs, because it'll build us up. I'm like, let me just read off a list real quick. These are soft skills that are learned as a byproduct. And it's like, these are life skills as well. Presence, situational awareness, initiative, grit, projection, wit, breeziness, motivation, emotional regulation, empathy, critical thinking, teamwork, public speaking, problem solving, creativity, listening, independence, mindfulness, preparation, organization, goal orientation, interpersonal skills, communication. It's like, these are very significant skills that people can use throughout life, and they're all learned. Some are just a byproduct of doing what we actors refer to as the work, and it's going through all these different systems, these tools and techniques. So if we just take it out of the situation that it's for the imaginative stage and just apply it into your daily lives, it'll change your life. It'll make your life richer and fuller. It'll allow you to grow into the person you want to be. It's kind of like insecurities. In the acting world, that's known as stage fright. Now, the juniors actors have to deal with stage fright because they haven't worked out all the moments. If you do the work, you work out all the moments, ask all the questions, have all the knowledge, rehearse what you need to rehearse, you're not going to have stage fright. Same thing in life. If you want to propose to your girl, work out all those moments before you do it. Have multiple different ways just in case something goes wrong. What's your backup contingency plans? What can you do next? What if she says no? So these are applicable in all different aspects of our lives. We don't have the right mindset or eye set to look at it yet. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how do I explain it in a way to let the world see what it is that this actually is.
The interesting part, James, is that obviously you had an amazing background and a foundation that's very important to get to all of that. The other part that I believe is being very important to me is that, first and foremost, what I told you, who am I? And to gain that self-confidence to allow me to become an effective communicator through Toastmasters, help me in that process. Obviously, discovering ADHD was extremely important. And then the other one is the fact that my formal education stopped at grade 7, but then my real education only started then because I was very, very interested in manufacturing of lumber projects in particular, but also in how to do business and how business works and all of that. And that was invaluable to me and served me very, very well when I decided to go to a new country, Canada in this case, and then start my own companies, and then from there and then build it up successfully into business. And I'm not here to bragging about my businesses, how well they do, and all the other kinds of stuff. Obviously, I've been successful in those areas, but that in order to do that and do it effectively, I had to find who am I and to gain that confidence, and then how to become an effective communicator, because unless you're an effective communicator, you likely will not be able to become not only a leader, but if you want to go to excellence, you have to go beyond being able to communicate. You have become excellent in that field. And I believe that part is very, very important. The other part that to me was very important and will be to you, or is already to a certain extent, is that about 6 years ago likely, I was into blogging, interacting on computers, email, and those kind of things. Then gradually, I got involved with a local television station and started to do communications on virtual locally. And so that was interesting. And then obviously the next thing that happened is COVID. And that didn't allow us to continue there for obvious reasons that we all know. You couldn't go in there then physically. And then said, what are we going to do now? And so I had this apartment here as an investment downtown of Prince George. And so, and say, well, let's build our own studio. And we did that and created the studio that you see now, from which I do initially the beginning of podcasting, where I interacted with people from around the region. And we got amazing individuals all around us, which is not uncommon in many places. And so interviewing them, I have a couch here, I have a couch here. So we're sitting there person to person. And then it got to the point that we were kind of running out on individuals that kept our podcasting going, and saying, I maybe should set up another studio in Vancouver and a whole new circle of individuals. But the more we talked about it, the more I watched television, CNN, ABC, and all the other ones, I see that on television we can have as many as 1, 2, 3, 4 different people all at the same time interacting and saying, the way to go is virtual. And that's when we did probably 2, 3 years ago after COVID. And then the other key there is that how do you find individuals to interact with? So that then becomes critical. So I then became part of Plot Match. That basically is an organization that matches individuals from around the world on similar topics to interact virtual. Today, we do probably 98% of all our podcasting, and I've done, as I said, my podcast number is 382, where I'm hosting, and then I'm guesting, have been guesting on probably another 200, 250 in addition to that. It's an amazing vehicle because it's in my opinion, the new media. Because while we are doing this, we already know a couple of things that we do that makes us unique. And as you indicated at the beginning, you're somewhat new on the podcasting side. So I want to just share this with you and with others, is that a couple of things that are critical to podcasting to get exposure is become predictable, or continuation is that, is very important, and do it well. So whatever you do, and then in our case, we're podcasting you now for about an hour, and we will release this podcast within the next 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours before the day is out, as we have seen it here. What happens to them is that people from all around the world can and will watch it. In our case, we have, I believe we are close to 750,000 subscribers on YouTube.
It's amazing.
That means that the other platforms, not only YouTube, but that means that those people are watching us all the time, but there are other platforms as well that we don't watch. So the likelihood is that, and I'm not bragging, but I do that for the benefit of, as you indicated to me, you're relatively new to podcast. I just want to show to you what we are doing and what it has done for us. We probably will have a couple of million people watching us.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
And that platform is amazing for a number of reasons. We have different individuals, not limited to any particular topic, that are of interest to me, but also what it does for me. I never know what will happen. We had never met before. You have an interesting background, very interesting actually, and so the question is, what will happen during this interaction? How will I be able to interact with James and make it not only interesting for him and me, but for all those people that are watching us? And so because we are different, but then what we found in the hour that we have interacted, that we have a number of things that are similarities, that are on the foundation of what I believe in, and what I still believe in is the next step beyond this is that I will continue to be a very active podcaster. I believe that we will start to approach on YouTube probably close to 1 million subscribers, and then in other ones, millions of people from around the globe. It's still all at the beginning. And the next step for me is to start a platform that in particular deal with issues that are important to me and that are not unsimilar to the issues that you raised, and deal with the issue of confidence, challenges along the way that have made my life what it is today. Nothing to do with money. It's everything to do with how will I be able to, for people that watch us around the world, to contribute something to their lives that gives them food for thought or makes them feel better. That's why I go to my background that was not easy necessarily, but saying that even at 84, that and you I wrote one of my last book is Living Young, Dying Old. Picture of me. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. So, but it's just one of the things. Whatever you do, do it well. But health and fitness is critical to that, not money. And then to be able to do that and then share with others your experience. And the most amazing vehicle in the world and as we go forward is podcasting. It will be global and it has huge opportunity.
I believe what you're saying 100% because I've had this idea since 2008. I wrote the book like in 2021, but I got no traction. And
if you get a copy of the book that you wrote around you,
yeah,
show it to us. Okay, so that is I'm going to show this one as well. That's a copy of your book, and I just want to show you the one. So, and you wrote that in 2008, and as you already know,
the idea came in 2028. It took me a long time because I'm not an author. I had to learn how to write a book, and then I had to go through all the process. But 2021,
it's not easy, James. I know all about it. So
I believe it. Wow, it blew up into something crazy. But I mean, I'm glad I did it. It was a learning process.
What an experience, but do not give up. I have, the first one that I wrote is Against All Odds. It's not about how successful John is, all the ups and downs. And people tell me, so for 20 years they say, John, you should write a book. And so for 20 years I started, and about 6 years ago I said, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. And so it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And then the other one that I feel strongly about is ADHD Unlocked. And then the other one is, which I believe in, is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And then the other one is Living Young, Dying Old. And then another one is coming out in June that is pretty much finished, is about communication skills. And
awesome.
and then other ones behind it. But so what I suggest respectfully to you from my experience is that stay the course, don't give up. You have the background for it and all those things, but it's a process. And a lot of people do not stay the process. And so what we're trying to do is create continuity. I podcast probably more than most people do. May do 4 podcasts on which I'm hosting and 2 where I'm guesting, something around that on a weekly basis. And then I release them very, very quickly, all within 24 hours. And then on all kinds of different topics. But also it has been rewarding for myself in terms of interacting with others. And I try to do that through my books. I do it already in terms of doing presentations, physical presentation. I did one, today is Wednesday, and I did one on Monday evening, actually, in another province. But we had about 350 people or something like that. But it takes me 2 days by the time I go there, by the time I go back. And then this podcast that we are doing, I know that this will be global, and I believe that probably up to 2 million people will watch this podcast. And so that's how powerful it is. So the other one, before we go, I want to make sure that if you got a website, people can contact you.
Yes, I have a couple different things. If you want to get my book, the only place you can get it right now is on Amazon. There's the digital and the paperback version.
Okay.
Again, it's all the best sells. J.J.R. Taylor is what I'm authored under.
Okay.
My website is www.tbcenterprises.com. That's TBC as in Tango Bravo Charlie, enterprises.com. And I started a social media a little less than a year ago, but it's Soy Candy, SOICANDIE, and it's on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube right now. Facebook too.
Okay, you got that all, Scott?
Got it.
Yeah, we got
Thank
all.
you.
We'll make sure we show it on there.
Thank you so much.
And for all the people watching us, that James has just started podcasting here fairly recently. And the other part that I always mention to people that are watching us is subscribe to us. It encourages myself and it encourages James to go on and keep continuing podcasting and like it and share it with others. And if you have comments, feel free to comment on it. And again, James' book at Amazon is that this is an example of the book. He showed it to us earlier. And James, very interesting podcast, and I wish you obviously all the best luck. Stay in touch with us, and we'll mark you down for probably 6 months from now or so. We'll contact you again and maybe do another podcast, or you can invite me on your podcast once you get a little bit further. Then we'll go from there.
Sounds great. Thank you again for having me, Mr. Brink. I appreciate reaching out. I've had a great time.
Thanks, James. Take care.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.